Director's Study Session, May 22nd, 2012, to order. Roll call of members. I'll just go around the thing here. Andy Sponseller is not here. Scott Hollenbeck is here. Eric Hines is here. Dick King is here. Don MacArthur's here. Eric Gabster is here. And Andrea Davis is not here yet, although I think maybe Andrea and David and Andy are both coming. Let's see, do we have any changes or additions to the agenda around the board? Not seeing any. Okay, we also have every public meeting, there's an opportunity for public comment for items that are not on our agenda. Does anyone have anything they would like to comment on that is not what we're talking about tonight? Okay, seeing none. We're here tonight to have a study session regarding the short and long range plan for the future of Mountain Line bus service. And Michael Tree is the general manager. I was going to kick it over to him to introduce this a little bit more.
You bet. Thank you, Chairman MacArthur and board members. We have here with us this evening Mr. Thomas Whitman from Nelson Nygaard. And as the board will recall, the board has a desire to take a comprehensive look at all of the bus routes and to also conduct some short and long range planning, which would take the Mountain Line bus services through 2040. And so to accomplish that, the board advertised a request for proposals, and Nelson Nygaard was selected as the most qualified firm to conduct that study. In the fall, we had introductory public workshops. There were 3 of them in which we took public comment on what folks thought about Mountain Line, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what they wanted to see in the future. And after those workshops were conducted, Nelson Nygaard went back and created a set of alternatives which would not only reflect some of the comments that were made in those public workshops, but also reflect the guiding principles, which I think Thomas Whitman will talk about in a few minutes, the guiding principles that the board had set for this work. And so an additional 3 set of workshops happened in March, and the public had an opportunity to comment on those 3 alternatives, and more specifically about lots of questions within those 3 alternatives. And as a result of those public workshops, again, the guiding principles and the recent planning efforts of the community, Mr. Whitman now has a preferred alternative, which includes 5 different phases. Tonight we'll talk in detail about phase 1, which the board will have an opportunity in July to have a public hearing on and to discuss and debate and contemplate approval of, with an implementation date of August 27th. This evening we'll also take a look at phases 2 through 5, which are conceptual at this point, and provide the board an opportunity to ask questions on each of these 5 phases. And if it's, as it's the board's desire, to have the public as well ask questions of the consultant who's here this evening. And so that would conclude my staff presentation, and certainly I think Thomas has a little review up front in his presentation. So Chairman MacArthur would recommend Thomas move forward. I do know that there are potentially others coming in at 5:15 when the buses next come into the transfer center. And we've tried to schedule this more or less from 5 to 6:30 so that those of you who need to catch the bus can catch the bus to go home. And so that was the reasoning for the 5 o'clock start time.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So let me just say a few things about the timeline of the meeting here. Thomas Whitman has told me that it's about a 30-minute presentation to go over the information. We are hoping to be out of here at 6:30 if possible. We can stay a little bit later if folks want to continue the discussion. My thinking was certainly that the board would get a chance to ask questions of Thomas, but mainly we're here to also hear from you guys and to have you have an opportunity to ask Thomas questions and to pose questions that the board should consider as we deliberate on this in the future. So this is it's not a hearing to determine whether or not we're approving this tonight. We're just hearing comments, listening to questions, and hoping to get that much closer to a decision that would be happening. What is the exact date, Michael, that we would be wanting to take this up as a final decision point? July 27th?
July 19th.
July 19th.
5 p.m. here in the City Council chambers for an implementation date of August 27th, which is when students come back.
Okay. So with that, I'll turn it over to Thomas Whitman.
Okay, thank you. This presentation is all about, how do we get to a preferred alternative, and what are some of the things we looked at in order to get there. And some of the things I want to talk about as a part of this is to review the guiding principles, talk about some of the background information that we used to achieve, to get to where we are today, summarize some of the outreach that we received as part of the last round of public input, and then talk about the refined recommendations, including Phase 1, which is cost constrained, Phase 2, and the future phases, which are cost unconstrained. And finally,
can everyone hear Thomas back there?
Steps.
Everyone's hearing in the back? Yes. Okay. Thanks.
So the guiding principles for the comprehensive operational analysis were to focus inward with transit agency assets and services and to complement recent community planning efforts and funding strategies to assist in producing a highly walkable and transit-friendly urban core. The analysis should be taken from the point of view if MUTD's fixed route system was being designed from scratch today, would it be in the same form with the same routing, and if not, how would it be different? And we were to maximize the ridership with the resources available, focusing on increased frequency of service and shorter trip times for passengers in the urban core, and to maximize public involvement and make the best use of partnership opportunities. These were the things that you told us you wanted us to take a look at as a part of this effort. And I believe that the product and the preferred alternative that you see here matches those guiding principles. I want to touch base on some background information on some of the Mountain Line services. Mountain Line currently operates 12 different routes, throughout the Missoula Valley. We looked at what is some of the existing ridership patterns. We collected data on every trip operated by Mountain Line, counting the number of people getting on and off at every one of the bus stops. We also looked at how productive each one of the services were, and we looked at this from a series of productivity standards. Some of the two classic ones that we tend to use are how many passengers are being carried per mile of service and how many passengers are being carried per hour of service. And you tend to look at this to see who is the top performers, what your system average is, and who are the bottom performers. Where are you not getting your bang for the buck? And as you can see right here from a passenger mile perspective, routes 10, 5, and 11 are some of the lowest performing routes in terms of how much bang for the buck you're getting for service that you're putting out there. When we looked at one of the other performance measures from a route productivity perspective, from the number of passengers you're carrying for every hour of bus service there is out there. Again, routes 5, 11, and 10 were the lowest performing routes along this. One of the things you can see in both of these charts here too is that Route 1 is an absolute superstar. Route 1 connecting downtown Missoula, University of Montana, the Southgate Mall. We also looked at land use and where are the densities in the community that are from a typical perspective are sufficient to support fixed route transit services. In general, you need between 5 and 10 units or households per acre to support fixed route transit on an ongoing basis. There are exceptions to this rule, but this is using experiences found throughout the country. This rule holds pretty steady wherever we go. And you can see that in the urban core, wherever you see darker green right here, you see those densities that are sufficient to support fixed route transit, but there are also large areas where 0 to 5 units per acre are present right now. And these are some of the areas, if we look at the ridership patterns, tend to also have lower ridership areas as well. We looked not only at population density, but also employment density to see where the major employment areas are, and I don't think there's any surprises right here. University of Montana, downtown, and the area around the Southgate Mall are the biggest employment concentrations in the city of Missoula. One of the other things from a background perspective we wanted to answer is why does, one of the guiding principles that you gave us was we want to see more frequent service. Why does frequency matter? The reason for this is manifold. Number one is it increases ridership. In Flagstaff, Arizona, a new bus route was just instituted between downtown Flagstaff, the Northern Arizona University, shopping area, and a big apartment complex, where within less than a year, that route is carrying 3,800 riders a day. It runs in parallel to an existing university route as well, so it's a very, very popular route. The rest of the system carries about 1,800 people, so it's a huge driver. It's allowed students and people who live outside of the core area of downtown Flagstaff to access the services and retail areas in downtown Flagstaff, much more effectively than they have right now. Boulder, Colorado is also similarly sized and has taken great strides to focusing high-frequency service in the core areas of the city. Approximately 10% of existing commuters use this transit system every day, and 37,000 passengers are carried daily in Boulder. This is 10 times the ridership, or almost 10 times the ridership of what you're carrying right now in Missoula. And a community survey that was taken several years ago indicated that 25% of people in the community say they use transit regularly or semi-regularly over the course of the year. This is what frequent service will do for you. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the outreach results of that from several months ago, from I guess a month and a half ago. 3 different alternatives were presented to the public, and they were called the business as usual alternative, which focused on major operational issues such as on-time performance and improved connectivity. Then we had the efficiency alternative, which increased efficiencies under the existing route structure. And then we had the focus inward alternative, which focused service in the transit-friendly, walkable core of Missoula. We presented these 3 alternatives to the public, and I will say we had a large amount of public feedback on this. And we had 270 responses to the online survey. We had 117 responses at a series of public meetings that took place at the university, fairgrounds, and in downtown. And we had over 200 written comments, whether it's letters, emails, written comments, faxes, sent by message in the bottle. It was a lot. We had some of the responses that we heard from, both online and public meeting, came from the same people, and so we need to recognize that. So some of these responses were duplicative, but overall, I think some of the messages that we heard from here were pretty loud and clear. So I'm going to go over some of the responses to each one of the alternatives. The business as usual alternative focused on trying to address some of the operational issues such as on-time performance as well as overloading in the Missoula. And so some of the things that were looked at was, can you see this cursor moving right here, or should I go to a laser pointer? Okay. We're looking at shortening Route 5, making adjustments to the Route 12 alignment, looking at making an adjustment to the Route 9 alignment, so that goes on 3rd and Orange instead of Russell and Broadway, and then also looking at increasing frequency on the Route 8 and 1 and 2 as well. One of the big things in the business as usual alternative was a removal of Route 10 to help pay for some of the frequency improvements along this route. When we asked from public's perspective of how did you feel about this, and the majority of respondents were overall supportive of this alternative. One of the biggest things that came into play was that the combining of routes 1 and 2, the 2 most successful routes that Mountain Line operates, was one of the most requested, or one of the things that was seen as very, very well received. One of the other things, one of the other conclusions from this was that nobody likes to see their service reduced, but they were understanding, the response was supportive of service reductions where it was clear that this was being done to enhance on-time performance. And also the level of support for reducing, for instance, Route 10, overall, the total number of surveys supported that reduction if it meant improvements elsewhere in the service area. So the next alternative is a surface efficiency map, which looked at several different alignments. Some of them similar to the previous alternative, such as a truncation of Route 5. Route 4 stays the same. Route 12 would operate only between South Hill and the university, and a realigned Route 6 would serve the other portion of South Hill and the university, Route 8 would be a change to operate from the university to Community Medical Center. One of the big things with the efficiency alternative, that is different from the previous alternative is not only is Route 10 not being shown in this map, but also Route 9, which is the target range route, was not being shown in here. So, what did folks have to say about this alternative? Just over 50% of respondents, to both in the public meeting and the online survey supported this alternative. It's a significant drop from 16% drop, I believe, from the business as usual alternative. Some of the things that received support were the combining of routes 1 and 2 together and improving the frequency on this route received support, and close to 50% of respondents said that they supported adding 15-minute service to, a frequency to combined routes 1 and 2, knowing that there was a $920,000 price tag associated with this annually. Some of the restructuring of routes to provide more service to the University of Montana were generally well received, but some of the things such as having Route 12 end at the University of Montana and not go downtown were generally not supported. And certainly the reductions in service on routes 9 and 10 to reinvest in additional frequency on some of the other routes were not well received as well. The third alternative was the focus inward alternative, which looked at concentrating service in the urban core of Missoula and reducing services throughout some of the outlying parts, including Rattlesnake, the Mullen Road area, Target Range, as well as South Hill. What this did do, however, is allowed routes 1 and 2 to operate, which connect downtown, University of Montana, Southgate Mall, the North Reserve commercial area and downtown, with service every 15 minutes throughout the day. So this was a way to get that frequent service in the core area with existing resources. I will say that there was very little support for this alternative. Over 80% of respondents disapproved of this alternative. However, one of the things, even though people disapproved of the alternative, the idea of combining routes 1 and 2 together and having more frequent service was well received. The problem was how that was being paid for. Cutting 5 routes in order to pay for that was very much not well received. Like the previous alternative, restructuring additional routes to serve the University of Montana was supported. In order to look at what options we could look at so that we allay some of the negative impacts of the focus inward, we looked at adding back 2 hours of morning peak service and 2 hours of afternoon peak service in Rattlesnake along the North Expressway area, the South Hill, as well as portions of the area currently served by Route 9. And we asked folks how would they support that. And we also looked at adding 3 hours of evening services on the routes that were out there. And this would cost approximately $520,000, and approximately 58% of folks who responded supported that said this was a good investment, or it caused them to it didn't cause to say that 58% now support the focus inward, but it made it they supported this improvement to that alternative. One of the things that became clear as a part of this that there was coverage was seen as more important than evening service. People, once they have bus service, they want to make sure they keep that bus service, and so that was seen as more important than adding evening service to there. So the conclusions of the public outreach was that there was strong opposition to service coverage reductions except where it can improve on-time performance. For existing customers, coverage is more important than evening service, was the conclusion that we can draw from this. The other thing that became clear is there is support for a more frequent service on routes 1 and 2 in the system. It was clear in all 3 alternatives. So our job then was to take what we heard and pull it all together and try to balance some of the competing interests that we heard. Take a look at the guiding principles that we were given, take a look at the feedback from the public that we had received, and look at how can we make this work and try to get the maximum benefits while negatively impacting the least amount of people. So we looked at creating a preferred alternative, and the preferred alternative looks at largely maintaining the existing route structure. It achieves a 15-minute all-day weekday service on the best corridor in the city, which is between the downtown University of Montana and Southgate Mall. It addresses major operational issues such as on-time performance and reliability of time connections between routes. It puts service where the population and employment densities will support transit and allow for continued ridership growth. And it reduces service levels but maintains coverage in some of the outlying areas. So I'm going to go over some of the specific changes for the preferred alternative now and then show you the map that goes along with this. There's 3 different themes here right now. It's the improved frequency theme, where we would be looking at having Route 1 operate every 15 minutes between downtown and the Southgate Mall, realigning Route 8 to serve the University of Montana, Southgate Mall and Community Medical Center, and operate every 30 minutes during peak times. To improve the on-time performance on routes 5, 6, 7, 9, and 12 by making tweaks to the route, little changes to reduce the running time on them to ensure that they don't run late throughout the day. And it reduces service in less productive areas. And when I mean less productive areas, these are areas where ridership is not as high as other parts of the city. Route 10 would be eliminated. Route 9 would operate during peak hours only, and that would be for 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. And routes 3 and 5 service levels would drop during peak times as well. So they would operate hourly throughout the day. So this is a map. This is a map of what this would look like. I'm going to go around the clock, I guess you could say, and talk about each one of them. Route 4 would remain as is, but there would be 2 additional trips on Saturdays operated on this. Route 5 would operate hourly throughout the day. The Lolo Duncan deviation would no longer be operated. Route 3 would operate hourly weekdays and Saturdays. Route 11 would operate as is today. Route 2 would operate as is today. Route 9 would operate from the downtown transit center via Orange and 3rd out to the Target Range area and end at Community Medical Center, and it would operate hourly, 3 hours in the morning time and 3 hours in the afternoon time. Route 8 would operate from the University of Montana to Southgate Mall and then to the Community Medical Center. Route 7 would operate between Walmart, Southgate Mall in a different alignment to serve Missoula Manor, but still on the same block, coming up Stevens to Orange and into downtown. Route 12 would operate as it is today, and Route 1 would operate every 15 minutes all day from downtown past the University of Montana and end at the Southgate Mall. Route 1 and 9 would no longer be connected like they are today.
Excuse me, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask about Route 4 again. You're only adding 2 more rides on Saturdays?
2 more trips on Saturdays. So right now service is every 2 hours, and we can add 2 more trips. So that during parts of Saturday it would be hourly, and during other parts it would be as it is today.
So would it go to 7:15 like it does during the week? Or is that how it's going to be running?
It will be running the same span of service as all of Saturday service operates approximately 8.5 hour span of service right now, and it would continue to do that. There will be no reduction in service. I guess the most important thing is there's no reduction in service on Route 4. Yeah.
Let's let Thomas finish his presentation. You can ask him a question beyond this. We'll give you a chance to ask more specific questions. Everyone will get a chance to ask questions of Thomas.
Oh, overall, the preferred alternative is cost neutral, and we're anticipating this will increase ridership system-wide over existing levels by approximately 70,000 rides annually. We also looked at phase 2, which is, to take an example, this is a short term. We'd be looking in the next 3 years, to begin looking at this. This is to address some of the things that we heard were high priorities for existing passengers as well as potential passengers. It looks at achieving that 15-minute all-day weekday service on the best corridors, routes 1 and 2 in the city. It also looks at improving frequency in other corridors in the city. It adds evening service, 3 hours of evening service to the heaviest ridership routes in Mountain Line, and this will require some additional resources over what you're operating right now. Some of the changes for the phase 2 include improved frequencies on routes 1 and 2, which would be interlined at the Southgate Mall, so that a route 1 would come out to the Southgate Mall and continue as a route 2, and a route 2 coming into Southgate Mall would continue from the mall as a route 1. And both of these routes would operate every 15 minutes throughout the day. Route 8 would have improved peak frequency during the morning and afternoon peaks. Route 6 would operate every 30 minutes all day on weekdays as well. Route 6 would be realigned to serve the University of Montana, and evening service would be provided on routes 1, 2, 6, and 7, so to operate 3 hours later to approximately 10:45. This is what the map would look like. The only significant routing change from the previous alternative is that Route 6 would use its existing, virtually its existing alignment, and at Higgins and Beckwith cut over to the Arthur, and then at University cut back to Higgins. So service to Hellgate High would still be maintained, but that a direct one-seat ride particularly from the apartments in the south end of Missoula would have a direct shot of service to the University of Montana. This would require, approximately $1.1 million annually to operate, and will require 3 more peak buses than over what the current fleet is. And we're anticipating having almost 275,000 new annual riders as a result. One of the last things I want to present is some of the future phases, some of the things where we see needs in the community, where we see some of the development patterns happening, and where we see how transit, how Mountain Line can help support the efforts to focus inward for Missoula, to have continued economic development within the city, and to help with some of the redevelopment efforts that are currently occurring and are in the works. What the next couple of slides are a show of the primary transit network, and those are the high-frequency corridors, those areas where Mountain Line should be planning to put higher frequency service into the future. And so that developers, people who are building apartments, new job centers, can plan for, if we build here, there will be decent or transit service that we can count on in the future. These are designed to provide context for Mountain Line's future expansion plan. So the first phase, the phase 3 on this, which is between the 5 and 10 year time frame, begins looking at not only having routes 1 and 2 being high frequency routes, and I want to make sure that everybody understands, if you don't see the remainder of the routes on here, we're only showing the high frequency routes here, the ones that would have run every 15 minutes or better during the midday. So some of the other routes that aren't operating as frequently are not showing on this map. But as a part of phase 2, phase 1 would have route 1 be a high frequency route. Phase 2 would have route 2 be an additional high frequency route. And phase 3, we'd be looking at having route 7 be a third high-frequency route with 15-minute peak service, 30-minute midday service, and 30-minute all-day Saturday service. This will require approximately $750,000 additional operating costs annually over phase 2, and will require 2 additional buses. Phase 4, which is the 10 to 20-year time frame, we'd be looking at adding 2 additional routes to that high-frequency service net, and those would be Route 8, connecting University of Montana to the Community Medical Hospital via Southgate Mall, as well as Route 6. We'd also be looking at adding a Sunday service in this phase, and improving some of the, we'd be looking at some additional capital facilities as well. This would require over $1.45 million in additional operating over Phase 3, in addition to 4 additional buses. And again, what you will, by doing this right now, you're beginning the process of creating that high-frequency network where if you live in this area, you can begin depending on transit service for virtually all your trips 7 days a week, and truly making a difference in mobility for and economic vitality for the community. Phase 5 is to implement the full network of higher frequency routes, and to look at a downtown circulator, whether it's a streetcar or rubber tired, between the University of Montana and some of the new development, for instance, at the Sawmill District. Be looking at operating routes 1 and 2 every 7.5 minutes during the peak times, and also begin looking at a new route up and down the Reserve Corridor as that redevelops over the next 20 years. This, Phase 5 would cost an additional $3.8 million in operating dollars, and cost an additional 9 buses. So that concludes the formal presentation. The next steps for this would be to have a TTAC meeting on June 7th, a public hearing on, I believe, July 19th, and final approval would occur of any service change that comes out of this process. It would occur 30 days thereafter, with an implementation that could be as early as August 27th.
Thank you, Thomas. So I thought what we would do here is to give the board a few minutes to ask a couple of clarifying questions, if you have any, of Thomas, and then we'd open it up to all you folks in the audience, with the stipulation that you try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And you feel free to ask questions of Thomas, or to make a comment to us and Thomas. And I guess my hope would be that, so that we're not trying to enter into dialogue back and forth with Thomas altogether, that if somebody wants to make a comment about Route 10 being eliminated in the preferred alternative, that maybe all the folks who have a similar concern could come up and add their thoughts about that issue, and then Thomas could talk to that issue all at once, just to keep it kind of organized, so we're not just into dialogue every time. That may not always work, but I'll try to referee it as best I can. So let's start off with the board. Are there any questions that you guys want to ask?
Preferred alternative.
Can you be on the mic for us too?
Is that working? The preferred alternative is the cost-neutral alternative.
Phase 1 of the preferred alternative is cost neutral, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of desire immediately. Maybe the board will have questions later that we can interject. But why don't we go right out? Thomas is going to switch around his chair so we can see what people are saying. But if folks could come up to the, you're going to be staring Thomas right in the face. Maybe we should get, Thomas, can you come over and sit, back over here somewhere where you have a mic? And anybody who'd like to come up, 3 minutes. I see 2 people already coming up. Just line your way up and come on up, and we will try to, if we can organize it as best we can so that people who have like issues talk to those, that would be great. Hey.
Press the button to turn on.
Yeah, make it green there.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
My name is William Knight. I work and teach at the university, and I take the Route 10 bus from out at near Council Groves Park. So I'm affected by the proposal to cut Route 10. I have 4 specific questions and then just a couple of brief comments. So the first question was, now Route 10 goes by the airport. Is there any, in the proposed alternative, is there going to be any replacement bus service for the airport?
Route 11 will continue to go past the airport.
Okay. The next question is, I know that Route 10 goes down Mullen Road and Broadway to high traffic, high speed areas, and I would imagine that cutting that route will increase both foot and bicycle traffic. I know that I will be biking as a result of cutting that back. So I know especially in the wintertime, dark and icy conditions present a potentially significant safety issue for that increased foot and bike traffic. Was there any analysis done on the potential impact with regards to the safety, increased safety risk?
In certain areas, you know, we did look at having alternatives to segments on Route 10 on Broadway. You know, certainly Route 14 would be a replacement for service on there, or Route 10 goes by right now. But on other segments of Mullen Road, you know, there were, you know, some of the quote-unquote alternatives that were looked at as like, what would people do? It's either they could carpool, potential van pool, bike, park and ride at Target, you know, to Route 2 were some of the things that were seen as, you know, potential alternatives for that.
Okay, next question. Was there any alternative in which Route 10 just had a skeleton coverage, or once in the morning, once in the evening?
No. One of the reasons why is that from a route design perspective, if you have a route that only has one trip in the morning and one trip in the afternoon, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to fail in the next couple of years. So the history of success for doing something like that, in my experience, has been extremely negative, and that's why it was not presented as an alternative.
Okay, final question, then I'll conclude with a comment. I know that a number of businesses locally, including the university, provide funding for the bus service. Have you consulted with or got any feedback from them with regards to cutting this route?
ASUM was on what we had a committee that you know, looked at these route alternatives, and they saw, you know, that they are well aware that Route 10 would be was up for elimination, and they were involved throughout this entire process.
Okay,
I can't speak for, you know, how they feel or not, but they know about it.
All right, I just want to conclude with a few remarks that go beyond just my personal being affected by this, because I can deal with it. But I appreciate the goal of this analysis to increase transportation in the urban core. I support that goal, but I think that maybe there are some things that are being missed by this cost-benefit analysis. I know, for example, at the university, not all classes are provided just simply because they give the biggest bang for the buck. Certain classes are kept because there are long-term benefits that are not immediately obvious. Missoula is, stands out in some very important ways. As a community, we have an airport, we have a university, we're next to the interstate, and we also can be a leader in ways that include alternative transportation. And to me, the idea of cutting an existing route is the wrong way to go. We should try to increase the ridership, but we shouldn't be cutting back something that's been established for a long time that will affect people who become used to this transportation. And we should also look forward in that, businesses that decide to relocate or start up in a community, they look at alternative transportation, and such as bus and bike routes and things like that, and they make decisions on relocating, and so there's this kind of non-quantifiable impact, that cutting back on transportation can have. So I think Missoula should be a leader, by improving and extending bus transportation, not cutting it back. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Rocky Allen, and I address the council on actually two smaller points. With the buses coming out of Shakespeare and north of Phillips and coming down Scott to get to downtown, and with the Route 2 going through that intersection, the intersection of Scott and Toole is terrible because the traffic rolls along Toole all the time, and there's a stop sign on Scott, and it's a dickens of a hard for buses, cars, and so forth to traverse that intersection from Scott, or even, and especially to make a left turn. And it's no fun for pedestrians either. So I would like to know, I've heard rumors there was going to be a roundabout erected for that intersection, but I think a semaphore would be more appropriate. A four-way stop wouldn't hack it because the Toole people would get very grumpy about that. But I think at least a semaphore. I also would like to see some kind of, although I don't live in Missoula Manor, I can appreciate the difficulty of the residents there in crossing Stevens at Central, because that's a very busy intersection. And perhaps a semaphore could be erected there that is in sync with the ones coming down Stevens, so when the Stevens traffic flows, it can flow smoothly. But when it's stopped, the residents can get across safely. Also, I was wondering if there were a shortened form of Route 10, or maybe that 14 could sneak up at least as far as the people who want to go to places like Walmart or the Blood Donation Center, which is just across Reserve, because they're a little closer to Mullen Road than they are to anything else. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Grogan, and my appreciation to Thomas for all his work. I'd like to read to the record, in regard to the August 27th implementation for the return of students, please consider Route 8. I feel this bus needs to serve and arrive at the University of Montana prior to 7 a.m. daily during the school year. According to the registrar's office, approximately 110 classes occur before 8 a.m. during the August 2012 session. In addition, staff and student workers often must report to assist patrons for a 7 o'clock opening of the Mansfield Library, the UC Market, dining services. As recently as 1998, Mountain Line did provide the first inbound bus from Southgate Mall, leaving at 6:18 to the university for arrival at the university prior to 7 a.m. With the new proposed Route 8 serving Community Hospital campus, consideration should be given to a pull-out bus to arrive at Community and to depart inbound to the university to arrive at the U prior to 7 a.m. weekdays during the school year. This will increase the ridership and help alleviate the often standing room passenger load of the existing first inbound Route 8 that arrives at the university presently prior to 8 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Yeah, Andrea.
Mr. Grogan, this is in particular to your questions. It might not be a question for you, but you're probably interested in the reply from staff and or Thomas. Had a couple questions relative to your comments. Thank you, by the way, for providing those comments. One, I was curious if, Thomas, you could share with us the cost of the option of increasing service prior to 7 a.m., if you could remind us of whether that was looked at as part of the alternatives.
The cost, the preferred alternative right now, the cost-constrained preferred alternative has 4 hours of additional service for Route 8. This comment came as an email, I think, a week ago, and as a result of it, we did look at, from a scheduling perspective, can we operate earlier? And the answer is yes, we can, given what we have. If the preferred alternative in its existing format were to move forward, we do have the budget to be able to do something like that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kirsten. I write the 10, and when you were giving your presentation, you said that people were saying once we have service, it's more important to keep it than have extended service. And I would say that's definitely the sentiment of everybody that I've talked to that takes the 10. We don't want to see that service cut. There are a couple of questions I had. On your productivity per mile stats, I know that the 10 is one of the longer routes in town. Once it gets past Del Mar, it goes out past Stone, swings back around to Broadway, goes out by the airport. Once you get past Del Mar, there isn't a lot of population density, so it's a really long route. Now that Stone Containers closed down and people aren't taking the bus out to work at Stone, did you consider what those productivity charts or stats would look like if you truncated the service and it was just going out to El Mar?
The answer is yes, that was. Looking at a route that just went to El Mar was one of the things we looked at. Given the amount of ridership, I believe it's 11 people in the morning, 11 people in the afternoon, it was not felt that that was a sufficient ridership base in order to have a successful route out there.
So you had an average of 11 people in the afternoon with all of the routes going out there in the afternoon?
I believe it was 11 ons and 11 offs in El Mar.
Okay, because I took the bus last Wednesday at the 4:15, and there were 6 people on the bus. And then I took it last Thursday at the 5:15, and there were 8 people on the bus. And I kept thinking if we consolidated the 3:15, the 4:15, and the 5:15, and had all those people on one bus getting home, because we rely on it to get to work. I work at the university. I'm also a student at the university. I would adjust my schedule to make it work so I could get home, so I don't lose my job,
Yeah.
so I can get to school. So I was wondering about that. And then, let's see, what was the last? Okay. So the property tax base. I looked at the map that's available online for the property tax base. You said that this is cost neutral. This change would be cost neutral. If you eliminate the 10, there's a significant amount of tax revenue that comes from the neighborhoods all along Mullen, all the way out to El Mar Estates, that's line itemed out and goes directly to MUTT. So I'm like wondering, how is this cost neutral if you eliminate our route and we're no longer paying that line item tax revenue to the transportation district? I'd like to know from the people that are the appointees from the county commissioners. Have you spoken with the county commissioners about that, about the tax revenue that we're paying that's a line item on our taxes that goes to the transportation district?
I'm not a county commissioner appointee, but I'll take a first stab at that. If you look at the district, do we have a map that shows the MUTD district?
Give me a second, I can pull it up.
So I guess the short answer is the district goes a lot of places that we don't serve with buses. The district's a lot bigger than just the area that has bus lines that are servicing it. And so the community as a whole has made an investment in the bus service, not only for the people who are getting direct bus service, but also to mitigate congestion and to provide better air quality and other things like that. So not everybody who's in the district gets service.
Okay, so for county residents that are out in county that are still paying that line item in our taxes for the transportation district, even though we're not benefiting from it, the county is planning on continuing to tax us and giving it to the transportation district?
Correct.
Okay. And there was no plans whatsoever to truncate the route to El Mar as an alternative or reduce the number of service to at least get us to work and to school?
That as was the looking at a service out to El Mar, as well as the Futura, the mobile home park about a mile down from the airport. Both of those were looked at as potential options for being able to turn a bus around there and have a a shorter route. Once we looked at the route layout, in neither case, you would still have an extremely low performing route as a result, and therefore
Even
it
if
would.
you reduce the number of routes. Do you have that information available somewhere?
What specifically would you be looking for?
I would like to know, how you came up with that, like what the numbers actually look like, what your projected numbers actually look like.
Well, yeah, I can tell you right now. We looked at what the existing ridership was in that area. We looked at
11 people a day?
that's in El Mar Estates. Then we looked at the number of riders. That were on Mullen Road between El Mar Estates and downtown, and said, once you add that all up, it doesn't make a fixed route bus that will be successful.
All right. Well, that's all.
I can provide you with the numbers, the ridership numbers that we used for that. That's it.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what it would look like if we had like one bus bringing people into work and school in the morning and one bus bringing people back home at
Thank you. I think that there's going to be some information that's going to come out over time around this. I mean, if the board directs Thomas, we'll try to give him some questions at the end of this that we want him to respond to. And
You guys could consider keeping at least one bus to
Yeah.
get to school to work in the morning and one bus to get us home in the evening. Because in the winters, if you've ever
Right.
been out there, it's impossible.
Okay. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Sindelar, and I actually have a follow-up for that. You say 11 riders per day, that's part of my question. 11 riders per day from Elmar, that's it?
That's it.
Over all
11
the routes, okay.
11 boardings, 11 alightings.
Okay, that's not true, but anyway.
I will
This
say,
morning, for example, there were 20,
we conducted
so-
a ridership count,
Okay,
and
I
we're
understand.
using that as a representative day. There will be variations, and I fully understand
That's
that.
unfortunately very inaccurate. I have a question about the Route 10 and the Route 5 and the Route 11. You said in your presentation that those were the 3 lowest ridership producers, and Route 5 is being truncated, Route 10 is being eliminated, but Route 11 isn't being touched. That confuses me because Route 10 and Route 11 overlap. and
That's part of the reason,
I
yes.
would like to ask why it hasn't been considered that Route 11 is reduced and Route 10 is retained in a reduced capacity.
The biggest reason for that was that, first of all, Route 11, has more growth potential. The density along Route 11 from a housing perspective is growing. The number of people living along there is growing, and it's not just within a quarter mile, but it's actually walkable to the route easily is growing. The number of employers out on Expressway is also growing. And if we looked at, you saw the for the focus inward alternative, both of those were on the table to go away because neither of them were stellar performers. Between the airport and downtown, both of them are serving the same market. And so there definitely is some overlap. And so when we looked at which one of them should survive, under these cases, we went with the one that had the better land use, the better potential to attract more riders into the future. That was the deciding factor in helping us pick one versus the other.
I have a comment about the target demographic of Mountain Line, and one of those targets is low-income housing. And the Mullen Road corridor, in the statistics that I pulled up on Mountain Line's website, it talks about one of the 4 routes that it talks about is Route 10 serving low income. And we are currently seeing a huge apartment complex going up that is eligible for low income, 200 apartments, eligible for low income assistance. These apartments will no longer have bus service when they're finished. And so I just want to make that comment, in addition to the rest of us not having any service. And I also want to make a comment about Route 1 and the frequency of service. A lot of the new riders or more frequent riders on this 15-minute service are going to be in direct competition with the ASUM Park and Ride, which bases its funding on ridership. And so that seems to be the university is funding Mountain Line, the university is funding ASUM Transportation, and that's a conflict of interest, competing against itself. So I just want to make that comment for the record that to sacrifice all of this other stuff to produce 15-minute service, which is in direct conflict with a service that the university already provides, is wrong.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pat Turnage, and I live on the west side of the Rattlesnake. And I have had about 20 years of access to bus service, and it's going to be really difficult, I think, to decide to have to drive to campus most days. If you've ever, I would invite you to walk Lolo Street in the winter after dark and find out how comfortable that feels. I've also had written, I know, 3 different times about whether or not there'd be any consideration to making that route longer than 30 minutes, and I would adjust my schedule to make it work. Whether or not it has to totally be tied to 30 minutes only. And I know that it's not as much of a ridership, but, well, some days there's been 9 people that get on just at one time frame on the west side, especially with bad weather. So I don't think it's, if you come, people ride. And that's my only thing, I guess.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Tyron Van. I work at the university, and I'm negatively affected by, well, this is my wife and my child, negatively affected by the proposed change to Route 12 in the preferred option that's being presented, the elimination of the Parkview loop. So first of all, this will be a comment. There are a few others here tonight who are also here to voice their concerns about the change in Route 12, and I know they'll have some other things to say. Really appreciate, Thomas, all the hard work you've put in. I was at the Fairgrounds meeting. You might recall we had a chat, and I think you've done a great job. It's a tough job to have. Also, I'd like to express appreciation to Michael, whom I saw several times on the Route 12 bus, so he's been there checking it out as well. So I'm a regular rider in the mornings and evenings on Route 12. I'll be negatively affected because the nearest bus stop to me now is going to be considerably farther without the Parkview loop. And especially in the wintertime, that's a bit of a concern with ice and snow, obviously. And I also just wanted to remind everybody here that at the Fairgrounds meeting, when the different proposals were put up, including the preferred one that's been adopted here for Route 12, the majority of people who responded to that in-meeting survey that was performed did disagree with those changes. So I thought I'd just remind everybody of that. Yes, I think that's about all I need to say. Thanks very much for the time.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. One more.
I'd like to say one more thing, is that because I'm so glad that you're planning this for the future, where we used to catch the bus on the loop that we will consider to be cancelled. Cairo used to catch with me when he was 2 years old. And I can see that there will be future, there will be more young families who move up to that area. And if you cancel that loop, it's really discouraged residents wanting to buy or even to move up there to live. So I'm really feel sad if that little loop got cancelled. And we'll see the loss for a lot of people in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Hartz, and I have a question and then some comments. Okay, I'm just curious. You mentioned the low ridership on Route 10. How much additional money would it cost if you were to keep just limited ridership on Route 10 on a daily basis? Even though I don't ride it frequently, I'm just curious.
How much money would it?
How much more additional money would it cost?
To keep Route 10?
Keep Route, yeah, on a maybe limited basis.
On a limited basis.
Peak hour service.
Yeah, peak hour service. I mean, if you were to do, if you were to operate Route 10 every, 3 trips in the morning, 3 trips in the afternoon to try to cover, the most work shifts, you would multiply, it'd be 6 hours of service times approximately $80 an hour per day. So it's 6 times 80 is $480 a day. Multiply that by 255 days. And that would give you your answer. And I'm not quick enough to figure that.
Michael's got a calculator.
No, it's 8 times right now. Yeah. Yeah. Or if you were to, in essence, it takes an hour for a round trip. Multiply every trip that you put out there by $80. That's
$125,000.
$125,000 to do peak service. So if we were to, reduce that from 3 trips each time to 2 trips in the morning and the afternoon, it'd be 2/3 of that.
So it'd be,
whatever that is.
So it's $60,000.
$80,000.
$80,000. Yeah.
Okay, and I understand your frustration with the possibility of Route 10 being deleted, but I'm a daily rider on Route 5, and when I went to that meeting in March, I was one that voted against the focus inward, because some of these people that live on Mullen Road can drive. They have cars, they can drive. I do not drive anymore. I do not have a driver's license. I have to rely solely on the bus to get to work and the rattlesnake every day. And if I did not have a bus route, I certainly would not be doing what I'm doing at the school. And as far as I understand, the lady from the west side of the Rattlesnake, her frustration with the cutting of the lower loop, that is a time consideration as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how many times I've been on the Route 5 bus, and it has been late because there have been people, so many stops along the way, going out and coming back, and then people that had to get on, people in the lower loop that were getting on the bus, made it even longer, take even longer to get back in. And then if there are people that are trying to transfer to a different bus, make the next bus wait, and then everybody's late. So that's why I voted against the focus inward, and I support cutting the lower loop. It's only a matter of time, it's a consideration of time. I understand that it's time. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Hart. I live over on the North 3rd, and I use the Route 3. I'm sorry I missed the other two meetings, but I found out that you're planning on taking the Route 7 and removing the Route 3 where the on Saturdays the Route 3 turns into the Route 7 and then goes on out to Southgate Mall. Now, the north side is a fairly compact area. On the north, you got the Interstate 90. You can't go beyond there without hitting without hitting the freeway or without going to Madison Street. On the south, you got the rail link, so we're limited very over there. But my concern is that on Saturdays that you're planning on taking the Saturday service from Route 3 and off of that connects with the Route 7. So how are we going to how is the Route 3 going to tie in with service downtown?
Route 3 would continue to go downtown like it does today, and then at the downtown transfer center on Saturdays, you have the opportunity to transfer to either Route 7 or Route 1 or Route 6 for that matter to take you to the mall.
Okay, that answers that question. But now on the weekdays, now I noticed that the time through the north side is only a 15-minute time limit. Normally it's okay, but on Dickens Street, I counted, there's 3 or 4 yield right-of-way signs on other streets, and 2 stop signs on Dickens Street. Coming south, Dickens is a north-south street. So you've got actually 5 signs there that either you have to stop or slow down, and then also you have to stop when it turns on to Stoddard and comes back into town. So my question is how to make it's a 15-minute run, and will we be able to, with a person that's coming from the north side to catch another bus, be able to make connections downtown to any of the other buses? And if so, do you happen to know which buses?
The Route 3 would be on weekdays as well as on Saturdays, will be tied together with Route 5 and the new Route 14. You would have on, depending on what time of day, you'd be able to connect with, virtually every other route that comes into the downtown transit center.
Well, I guess let me ask this question. It's a 15-minute route through there. So if you got, would would a person be able to make connections when it got downtown automatically with like say the Route 7 or the Route 8 or something like that?
Depending on the time of day, during, that connection will be available. The Route 3 is a 15-minute route.
Right.
Route 14, which does not exist right now, would also be a 15-minute route. So you'd run Route 3 or Route 14, and then you'd be back on the half hour when all the connections with all the other routes are made in downtown.
Because I was looking at this schedule there, and it looked to me like they're coming in of the Route 3, there'd be, like I said, it's a 15-minute run, but about a 45-minute wait downtown to make a connection, like if I wanted to go out to Trempers or out to Southgate Mall.
I would have to look at what specific time and what trip you'd be looking at to try to be able to answer that question.
But sometimes I usually take it around 10, like buses now, like example, the Route 3 leaves downtown at 10:30 to go through the north side over the Scott Street Bridge, and then comes back in on Pullman, and then comes back on Dickens Street, and that's the street that really takes some time, and it gets downtown at 10:45, where I could transfer, I could transfer to most buses there, and that's what I'm wondering. Would there be quite a delay in transferring to a specific bus if I needed to go grocery shopping or something like that?
I think it's all going to depend on if the bus you're transferring to comes every hour or every half hour. If the bus comes every half hour, the bus that you're transferring to, your maximum wait is going to be 15 minutes. If it comes every hour, there's a possibility it's going to be no wait for your transfer, less than 5 minutes, or it could be a 45-minute wait. It just depends. I don't, we don't have a specific schedule right now that we could say, here's what it's going to be. We'd be getting ahead of ourselves because the final preferred alternative is not set in stone right now.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, because like I'm a senior citizen. I'm 75. I'll be 76 in September, and I have disabilities too, nearsightedness, and I have a mild hearing loss in 1 year and moderate hearing loss in the other. So, and I don't drive now, and so I depended on the bus for transportation to get groceries, to go to the drugstore.
So the concern is that you might have to have longer delays down at the transfer center. That's what you're worried about,
Well,
that
that's
the
one
new
thing.
route would make longer delay. You'd have to sit longer
Yeah.
at the transfer center.
Yeah, especially on the Route 3, rather than making a direct connection.
Right.
I don't see that.
Yeah.
I see that you're gonna be there a shorter amount of time than a longer. I mean, a lot of times right now, I'm waiting an hour to 2 hours to make a connection. So the way that they're talking, your connection is gonna be faster.
So this is one, it doesn't sound like we have the information
We
to
don't have
answer
the
your
information
question
to
right
answer your
now,
question.
but we will try to find out, and if you can contact us later, we'll have an answer for you.
Yeah, I was just concerned because, like, if I need to make, like, go get to the drugstore to get my medicine and stuff like that, then, like, waiting an hour or so, or nearly an hour is
Yep. Right.
kind of a problem. Or if I need to go out someplace like to Trempers or
Right.
where it is.
We understand.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, thank you very much for these hearings.
Thank you.
And I would like to close with, I appreciate the bus service. You've done a lot since you really started up at the beginning of, when you first started the service. There's been some changes, some I like, some I didn't dislike, but I accepted them. And I know you want what's best for the riders and what's best for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Blazevich, and I live on Route 10. I wanted to show you that a lot of these people are scared of change. They want perhaps maybe, or they'll settle perhaps for a reduction in service, like reducing the amount of runs. But when you're talking about eliminating service, you're really talking about ruining people's lives here. You guys have, the Mountain Line has been in existence for a very, very, very long time. The Mullen Road will be within city limits in very short time, within the next 10 years. Same with the Rattlesnake. It'll be within city limits in 10 years. You need to try to service as many people that exist already on those routes rather than in the hypothetical 70,000 new riders. We don't even have a population of 76,000. So where you think you're going to get these 70,000 new riders a year, I don't know. But you're depending on things that do not exist, and you're prepared to ruin a lot of people that do. If you're trying to do the Route 1 as a 15-minute service, do you intend to have the Paralines following the Route 1 every route? Because to load or disembark a handicapped student that is trying to go to the university takes about 10 minutes. So there's no way they can keep their 15-minute route. There's just no way. Not unless the ASUM buses stay where they're at, unless they supplement the service that the Mountain Line already supplements. And when Mike Tree was on our bus, the Route 10, during the Bike Ride Walk Free Week, there were 18 riders before we hit the detention center. So there was 18 riders between the Super Walmart and Stone Container. So wherever you came up with that 11 people just out of Elmar is fictitious. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sally Richardson. I live out in, still in Missoula County, but just on this side of Bonner. And when you talked about eliminating Route 4, it affected me greatly because of a head injury on the job and not being able to drive, mobility problems, all the things that come with it. I depend on that bus for everything. I do have good neighbors, but I cannot expect them to do everything for me when they've got jobs. I understand Missoula, the core of Missoula, but even with my brain injury, it just seems to me to get the number of people that you're talking about, other than during tourist season or even with the university going, we need to be reaching more out into our community. We don't even go up the Upper Miller Creek, and you could at least go up Upper Miller Creek, go down Linda Vista, and loop around with those apartments over there and the new housing development and all that. And those people are left out, and a lot of those people over there are aging to the point they're going to need the bus here before too long, if they don't already. And I mean, this goes back to what the couple of people have said before me. That's where you're going to get these numbers. But until I don't understand cutting routes totally. It just doesn't. I understand the money, I understand the core, but you're looking long term. You're looking 30, 40 years down the road, but it doesn't seem to be. It all seems to be at the core. And your main traffic, it's not looking at the actual growth of Missoula and what we've actually got growing right now. So, I mean, that's my biggest concern is I already know for a fact that as somebody that worked with hospice, Partners Hospice, and how many elderly live up in these areas that could use these buses, and they're not even available to them. and they can't drive anymore. Their cars are just sitting in their driveway, can't drive anymore. They depend on their kids when their kids are in town or around. I'm sorry, my mind doesn't go real fast. I guess that's all I've got to say. It just doesn't make sense to cut routes totally, and it doesn't make sense to not reach out to these higher populated areas where people live in housing. Like I named up from Miller Creek in that area. We're already at Walmart. What's going up the top of the hill and looping down by all those apartments and everything, and back by Lower Mill Creek. The other thing I just remembered is what she was saying about the handicap. I use a walker, and I walk as fast as I can. And when you get to the bus station, you know you got a connecting bus as a rule. Well, the last time I rode, and I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but the bus driver on the waiting bus before the wheel stopped on my bus floor said, "You better tell him to hurry up because I'm leaving." And our bus hadn't even stopped. And I'm going as fast as I can. I was so upset when I got to the bus, and I looked at him and I said, "That's the cruelest thing you can say to a handicapped person, is you better hurry, I'm leaving." And he was running 15 minutes ahead of schedule. It doesn't make sense. And I don't know how, when you got handicapped, whether it be a walker, a cane, a wheelchair, what, that they're gonna make getting on the bus and the bus staying a 15-minute route. I think that's something that maybe your bus drivers need to let you know, is how many handicaps they have in their areas to affect these time frames. I thank y'all very much for your time and listening.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I gotta go this.
How many more folks, I see a few more people standing up, but how many more in the audience are going to want to make comment? I'm seeing another 4 or 5. Okay. I think we can just about make it. Might have to stay a few minutes after 6:30.
Hello, my name's Janet Serena, and I live out in Target Range on Route 9. My question for Thomas is, I'd like to see the numbers again on the productivity charts that you put up in terms of the bus routes and how they, where they fell in terms of productivity per mile and productivity per hour. Can we see those charts again?
Yeah, Route 9 is going to show up close to average or slightly
Yes.
below average.
Yes.
And the difference with Route 9 is there's 2 different segments. One part operates much better than the other. Here, you can flip back and forth in either one of these. Route 9 slightly above average in passengers per hour and slightly below average in passengers per mile. So either one. It's a tale of 2 routes. So the target range, let me go to the point. From a ridership perspective, where those riders are coming from, you know, the ridership levels are significantly higher east of Reserve versus west of Reserve. And so when we looked at, you know, is the route performing well, for Route 9 in particular, we did not just say, hey, we looked at this from a route perspective. We looked at each segment of the route and said, how productive is this segment versus that segment? How much ridership are we getting? Where is the ridership on Route 9 happening? And there are a couple of school trips that do well out there in the Target Range area, and there's a couple during the commute times that do very well in the hospital as a ridership point. But overall, if I look at where the majority of the ridership happens, east of Reserve versus west of Reserve. So you're absolutely right. If we look at wherever does Route 9 fall into place, there's a part of Route 9 that does very well right now, and there's other parts of Route 9 that don't do so well.
Well, all I can tell you is I was on the bus, I was on Route 9 coming downtown here this afternoon. And I got on the bus at 4:15, out on Mount and Clements. There were 15 people on that bus, some of them students from the Target Range School, some of them other people. I didn't ask anybody, where they were heading or where they were coming from, but out in the middle of the route, there were 15 of us on that bus. And none of those people would have had a ride under this new proposal.
That we'd be looking at starting service, the first inbound trip at 2:45, I believe.
No, you have it listed as 3:45.
I think that we've made some changes as a result of some of the things we've heard from the schools already. And Ray, if you could help me out right here, I think it was starting at 2:45 and then ending at what?
I'd like to make an impassioned plea not to cut service. Some of us have made life decisions based on the fact that Mountain Line, I've been riding Route 9 for 28 years, and that I've lived out in Target Range, and we initially were renters, and we built our house out there, and the reason we built in that area was because there was bus service. I ride my bike and I ride the bus. And I just don't see how you can, you have this huge urban transportation district, and we all pay taxes to support the bus service. I pay $63 a year on my taxes to support Mountain Line. And we've had this service, and now you're talking about taking it away. And I just plead not to do that. And to cut it to peak only is probably another way to kill the route, as Thomas said earlier. So I guess maybe that's your eventual goal, is to kill that route, that we will not have service to practically half of the Missoula Valley. I would submit that bus service is a lot more than getting numbers of people or luring people who could be walking onto riding a bus. Sure, that ups your numbers, but does it accomplish the goal of getting people in the community where they need to go? And these outlying service areas, they might not, quote, have the potential to be as productive as Thomas would like to see, but they serve people's lives. And I meet people every day on that route. I ride in the midday often because I'm self-employed. I have to get to clients. I have to have other things I need to do downtown to get to other bus routes. And I see people every day who don't have other options. And to cut that service to where it's only in the morning and the evening, as if everybody works an 8 to 5 schedule, which just is not true, and especially not true for Missoula. We're a town of people who do a lot of other things besides working 8 to 5. And the other thing about Route 9 is the 2 schools on it. And the school schedules are very different, and there's a number of things that the communities wanted to do with school students, and I would just advocate that cutting that route would make that harder to do and would not be a productive thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Vinton. Excuse me. I'm a social worker in Missoula. I've heard a lot of business model arguments and cost effectiveness, but when I look at Mountain Line, I don't look at a business model. I look at a public service and a social service, and I look at most of my clients use Mountain Line every day. Most of my clients are in, I would say, pretty extreme poverty, and I see a lot of the new cuts as against people in poverty because a lot of my clients live in those areas that are being cut. And so I see it as a big decrease in the quality of life in Missoula because we have been very friendly to the oppressed people here. And I don't like these changes, and I just thought I'd put my 2 cents in today. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to make an announcement here for a second. It's about 6:30 or so, and anyone who might need to get a bus at 6:45 at the transfer center There's only, 15 minutes between now and then. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Heather Stone, and the first thing is a comment I want to make, because Thomas may not be aware of this, but our state motto is the last best place to live, and that is one of the reasons why I moved to Montana. And when I was choosing where to live in Montana, I ended up choosing Missoula because it still had the values of a small town, but I could get around independently using Mountain Line because it did so much coverage area. I was thinking, wow, this is a city that really cares about its people. And now I don't feel that way so much, since you have taken all these suggestions from an outside source who hasn't been here in the wintertime. Well, he has been here this winter, but I'm sure he hasn't been walking around trying to catch the buses on the routes. And then there was just a Montana PBS special on the other night about the oil boom, and they were saying that Montana is a state that cares more about its people than about money. And they feel that the oil boom is kind of taken away from that. So do you really want to be Missoula be the one on the west side to be taking away from that too? That shows that Montana cares more about money now than it does about its people. And then I want to comment on a few comments that other people have made. And one, the lady who talked about it takes additional time to load people with disabilities who have walkers and canes. But another thing that a lot of people bring on the bus are strollers and pull along grocery carts, and they take just as much time to load because they have to be strapped down. And Mountain Line didn't help themselves at all when you guys purchased those new buses, because people with mobility devices and aids, they all have to sit up in the front because that's the only place they can strap down. And when you already got, like with me, they never even considered guide dog users and blind people, because we have to sit up front so we can tell the driver where we want to get off, because we can't see where to get off, and we don't only get off at the time points, we get off at other places. And so the way I have solved that problem is with most of the drivers now, they know that they tell me when they are coming up to a stop and somebody's going to need to load something. They say, Heather, someone's going to load. I hop off with my dog so they can put down the ramp and get the person on, and then I hop back on. So the drivers and I have solved that problem. But if you were really concerned about running on time, you should have purchased those buses, like our old 200 and 300 buses, where people can load easily in the front, or they have the longer length in the back if the front's all filled up. And then you guys are talking about this as like a projection of phases into like the next 30 years, and I definitely agree with the one person who said that, where are we going to get 70,000 rides? And a lot of the rides are going to come from the university, which is already a mess with its contract and stuff, so it's not good. That's not going to be really productive except in ridership. But it's ridership you're not getting paid for, and you're cutting over services to these outlying areas. And in the last 30 years that Missoula has developed, the people of Missoula pretty much have made the point that they want to live in outlying areas. They don't want to live around the downtown. They want to be away from the town when they go home, but they want to be able to get back in town without an hour-and-a-half commute. And Mountain Line has so far done a pretty good job of covering all that. And then my two questions for Thomas is on this phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5, where you're talking about the cost and you're talking about adding more buses and stuff. At your previous fairground meeting, you said all of those costs would be achieved by cutting the routes. And then you say in this phase 1, the routes are not being cut very much. But in phase 2 and phase 3, you mentioned about all these buses being added, but you never mentioned, are you going to be being able to pay for all these 50-minute routes by cutting those other buses from the outlying areas? Because we know in this economy, at least in the next 10 years, Mountain Line sure as heck's not going to be getting any money to add routes or maintain routes or put on more buses to make the routes run faster.
Let me answer that question. One of the
Who are you?
I'm to your right.
This is Thomas.
This is Thomas.
Oh, okay.
I think one of the alternatives that was presented at the presentation where you were at had an alternative that was called the focus inward alternative, where high frequency service was to be funded by cutting 5 different routes. That alternative was, uniformly negatively received by
Yes, you
the
said all
vast
that.
majority. Yeah, it's not moving forward. If any of the next phases, phases 2 through 5, does not look at reductions in service in any other routes. If there is a reduction in service, there is no. Let me just repeat that: there's no reduction of service in phase 2 to fund more frequent service on routes 1 or 2. That is not how it's being planned. There is no reduction in service being planned to
On
fund
any
evening
routes
service.
To fund these 15-minute
In phases 2 through 5, that is not being planned.
You are telling us today, in front of all these people as witnesses, that when phase 2 and 3 come out, you're not going to say, well, you guys approved phase 1, and now we're going to take chunks here and there to pay for this other service coverage which you guys said you preferred, which many of us don't feel that we said that, but that's how your information has all come to be analyzed.
I can only tell you that, if the preferred alternative as it is today, and that may change based on what we hear, if it is what it is today, that preferred alternative for phases 2 through 5 does not include any service cuts to pay to increase frequency.
And then my last question to you is that I do not know if this is a rumor or truth, but you can clarify it at this right here. Has your company been here to Missoula before and made a change to Route 8 that failed, and the bus drivers told you it would fail, and then they re-implemented Route 8 with a few changes, but it was your company that designed the failed one?
It was actually not my company that did it, but yes, I was the person who suggested a change to Route 8 that was not successful. There were other changes as a part of that route restructuring that were successful. So, I'll be open with you. Sometimes you do make mistakes, and that was one that was not uniformly received well. So,
because you are telling these people that, based on your knowledge, that Route 10 is going to fail even on a limited basis. And it's like, well, why did they even rehire you to do this if you've already failed once? Was plenty of, what qualifies you to say that this will fail if you even made a plan that failed here in Missoula in the past?
I'm going to have to defer that question to the folks who made the selection for that, to hire me. I mean, they're the ones that hired me.
Is any of those folks here tonight?
Sure. This is a board chair. We deemed that Thomas and his firm were the best qualified firm. We understand that when you make design decisions, not every one of them is going to pan out exactly right. And I don't know the history of the Route 8 realignment, but obviously something didn't work right, and Mountain Line responded to it, fixed it, and go forward. And that's what we're going to do this time too. Things don't work right, we're going to fix them and move forward.
So why isn't Mountain Line fixing it internally? Why are we getting all this input from the outside when the people who live here, obviously, who are the car riders, know what we're talking about, and so do the drivers? It just doesn't seem to make, you said you didn't know about the Route 8. Well, isn't when you go and hire someone and pay them like $45,000 to come up with route alternatives, shouldn't you have a history of where they have succeeded and where they have failed, not just where they have succeeded? Because they're not going to tell you where they failed.
I don't have a good response for you. We thought they were the best qualified firm at the time that they were hired.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Nancy Rattel. I'm an Elmar resident, so this is quick and brief. I support everything that's been said. I would ask that you do not eliminate Route 10, and that if you do need to address some changes, to retain peak hours. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
My name is Connie Peterson, and I also am a Route 10 person and live in Elmar Estates. My son has been riding the Mountain Line bus for upwards of 15 years to his job in downtown Missoula. My question for Thomas is, at what point during the year did you do the survey to indicate how many folks are riding that Mountain Line bus?
October.
And what was the span
What?
of time?
It was, I believe it was either a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Tuesday or Wednesday that we did the ridership count on.
Okay. The other thing that I'm going to say is I find it a little ironic that when my son comes home at 6:30, says to me, I can't ride that earlier bus because I would have to stand in the back because there's no room to sit. So that makes me question what the ridership really is at that point. He said this morning that there were like 11 people on the bus. That was one instance. I really question whether the numbers are correct. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm
You're back.
Rocky Allen once again, back with a totally different question. What service area does your senior van and paratransit cover? How far out does it go? Does it go out all the way to Smurfit Stone, for instance? If you need to get from there to a doctor's office, or Saturdays, for instance, I pick up my groceries at Safeway on Broadway and get. And God bless the paratransit, they get me home with my groceries, which is very, very nice.
Yeah, the paratransit and senior van services serve the whole district, the entire
Okay.
district.
Okay, so that includes way out as far as the airport.
It does.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Lauren. I find it a little unusual that I'm here in this capacity because by both training and by personality, I'm more of a diplomat and an arbitrator rather than an advocate. I'm here as an advocate this evening because it's been forced upon me. And I want to address the members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to have a public meeting. I also want to thank you for your sense of public service, and that's going to be the theme of my brief comment. It's not a question, it's a series of comments. And that is, it's public service. I've been a rider of the Mountain Line for 35 years. The very first route that was made on Route 12 on Parkview Way, I was on it. I've ridden this bus for 5 days a week for 35 years, both coming and going. And in that time, I've attended many, many public meetings about Mountain Line. It's given me a perspective. I've strongly supported Mountain Line in terms of taxes, in terms of public statements. And here's the real point. I've been proud to be a member of this community. I've been proud to support Mountain Line, both with my taxes, with my example of riding, as well as with my neighbors. The reason I'm here is that something that I've had for a long time is about to be taken away. And this is where I appeal to those of you on the board. It seems to me perfectly natural that you would want to hire a consultant, you have a new manager, there's a question of due diligence. That's exactly what you ought to do as a board. But the real key here is I want to appeal to your sense of public service. When you're responsible for public service, you're considering a wide variety of different things. Some of them are economic, some of them are statistical, but as you've heard this evening, some of these are very, very personal. Right? I too have served on the board of directors in Missoula for a public entity, for a very large hospital. And if you look up there in the chart, any even hospital here would say, look, there are certain units that just don't have the number of riders. And in terms of the broad perspective of judgment, you have to say, but that's something that we do. That's something that we do as a hospital. And that's what I'm appealing to you for. That's something that the Mountain Line does. I've always been proud of Mountain Line for being open, proud of Mountain Line for listening to public, proud of Mountain Line for having some sense of equity without a precise configuration of numerical scores and an engineering sort of feed. There has always been a concern that we were going to try to serve the community as best as we possibly can. And the idea now of taking out some of these routes after people have purchased their homes to do it, after they've set their lives according to this, it seems to me is something that's not only unconscionable in my mind, but something that you have to pay very, very careful attention to, Not because you're a consultant, not because you're an engineer, not because you're the manager, but because of the fact that you represent the public. I live on Parkview Way. What has been described to you as, quote, a benign tweak eliminates my ability to ride the bus. Right? It's not a benign tweak. It's not a minor adjustment. I just want to show you, and I want you to visualize this because of the number of people in the room. I have a petition here with over 50 signatures. I want to repeat that. 50 signatures of people who ride the number 12. On Parkview Way, on Ben Hogan, on Whitaker. You're smiling, Thomas, but these are real people. On Imperial, on Terrace Way, on Rimrock, all of whom are going to come together. They've got some reason to want to support the Parkview Way. And so, for those of you who are interested in numerical counting and values, I would like these 50 votes to count in your numerical score. I think to not do that is unfair. But my major point here is not numerical score, but it's public service. I think you owe it to the people of this community to have public service with a full understanding that some routes are going to be more productive than others, and you owe it to Missoula. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is David Hartzigan. I have one last comment and one last question. Okay, I worked way out on the north end of Reserve Street for several years at a restaurant, and I had to drive out there because the bus only went as far as Target. And I don't know if I asked this at the last meeting, Thomas, but why is it that all of Reserve Street is not in the transit district? The part of Reserve Street past Target all the way out to Grant Creek is not in the district. Why is that?
I have no idea.
But I found that out after I quit working out there. Why is that?
I don't have the answer to that. Ray or Michael, do you know the answer to that? Okay.
But I thought it was very ironic that a major part of Missoula was not in the transit district. And I had to drive 7 days a week to go to work out on Reserve Street. And Reserve Street can be very, very horrific, especially on a Sunday afternoon. Going to drive home from work. I was just wondering why it was not ever added to the transit district, and it could be, taxes could be paid to help fund services. That's all
Okay.
I've got.
All right, thank you. Anyone else out there? Okay. Any board questions or sum up or things that we want to have as a discussion here tonight? I'm getting to be low blood sugar myself, but I don't know about other people. I don't see anything from Eric. Andrea?
I don't necessarily have any additional questions. I just want to thank the members of the public for coming down and taking time out of your evening to give the board public comment this evening. There's some difficult decisions, I think, to be made. It's good that we hear from the public and we can weigh comments and the information that we have from Thomas. And you have seen the schedule. We would ask that you attend those public hearings as well. Thank you.
Let's go.
I want to thank you for having the meeting at a time where I can still get the 17, 15 bucks home.
You're welcome. Anything from this side, Dick or Eric or Scott? Everyone's leaving, but I just echo my thank you for all the people who came out and said their piece today or just came and watched. We hope you'll be in the process, as Andrea said. We'll call the meeting to close here.